Count.
Did you count?
1.
The bone. Not just the bone.
2.
2.3.
2.
3.
4. 5.
6. What?
Today I'm going to talk about Ebola. I'm going to talk about what it is, the signs and symptoms, and how it's transmitted. I'm going to talk about why at-risk people should be quarantined and the reasons people have given for why quarantine for possibly infected people is a bad idea. In this recent outbreak, 2,431 out of 4,655 have died, according to LiveScience.com. That puts the mortality rate at around 50%. So what is Ebola? The CDC website states that Ebola has been known as the Ebola hemorrhagic fever. It's a rare and deadly disease caused by an infection with the Ebola virus strand. There are 5 strands total. Ebola was first discovered in 1976 near the Ebola River, which on the map I've marked with a little silver star. As you can see on that, it's a small area and the river is actually really tiny. It's in the location of what's now known as the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And outbreaks have appeared sporadically in Africa. In this picture, it shows the main locations with widespread transmission, which includes Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. Places without widespread transmission are the United States, Spain, and Mali, which is right there. With that being said, the CDC has stated that the United States has only had 3 confirmed cases. And with this, the denser the population with Ebola is, the darker orange. Signs and symptoms for Ebola include things such as fever, a severe headache, muscle pain, weakness, fatigue, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, and unexplained hemorrhaging. Hemorrhaging is bleeding and or bruising. Symptoms may appear anywhere between 2 to 21 days after exposure, but the average is about 8 to 10 days. People who recover from having Ebola develop antibodies that last at least 10 years. So that's one perk to getting it. It's transmitted through direct contact. Direct contact is things such as body fluids like blood, saliva, mucus, vomit, urine, or feces from an infected person who can either be dead or alive, touches someone's eyes, nose, mouth, or open cut wound or abrasion. The Ebola virus can survive on dry surfaces for several hours, and those dry surfaces would be stuff like countertops and doorknobs. The virus can survive in blood outside of the body for several days. Now that I explained transmission, it's pretty scary. So think about flying with someone who's infected with the virus, and then I know it's gross, but you go out to the bathroom after them and they accidentally peed on the seat and then you sit in it, or you pick up a used tissue and it was actually someone with Ebola, and then without realizing it you wipe your nose or touch your mouth or something. Or your family member does their medical duty over in Africa to help fight the epidemic, and they come back home and they start resuming their normal lives, and they kiss you and they touch dry surfaces like your countertops and your doorknobs, and do normal things that are normal but could be risky if they had Ebola. If I was possibly infected, there wouldn't be a second thought in my mind to get quarantined, because I would want to make sure that my friends, family, and fellow Americans were not going to get the disease. I find that the complainers about quarantine are really selfish, because it's okay to go over to Africa and help fight the epidemic, but coming home, they don't care about the risks of bringing it back home. And also, if I had a business and someone needed to be quarantined, I would help find a way for them to keep their job while in quarantine because they were doing the right thing and not infecting others. So, while people are over in Africa, they wear hazmat suits. And as you can see in the picture, it covers every part of that wearer's body. It helps make sure that they don't get sick, but things happen. They could take off their masks somewhere, getting water away from infected people, but something can happen and there could be someone not in quarantine over there, but, is sick and they come in contact with them. It's not like they sleep in those. It's called Being Proactive. On an article from thedailybeast.com, it speaks about a nurse, Casey Hitchcock. She said that her human basic rights were violated when she was unsuccessful to fight her quarantine. An article on MSNBC states that the mandatory 21-day quarantine may be good politics, but it would discourage healthcare workers from going over to help fight the epidemic. In that same article, Dr. Art Renegold, the head of epidemiology at the University of California, states that he doesn't think quarantine would help and would have added benefits in terms of health. He also states that he doesn't think it would make that big of a difference of cases of Ebola in the United States. Although I'm not an expert, I don't understand how that makes any sense. If someone's infected and they don't know it yet, how is quarantining them gonna hurt? It's gonna help because it's gonna take them away from the general public and it's not gonna help spread. In conclusion, I find that the positives for quarantining would help keep the outbreak from forming in the United States. I know that Africa needs help, and I'm not taking anything away from that, but I feel like we should also take care of ourselves and our citizens and make sure that we don't get sick in the process. Any questions?
Yes.
Yes.
You stated that the typical time it takes to show that you've been infected is only 8 to 10 days. So why couldn't there be a voluntary quarantine that's 12 days instead of 21 days?
I think they just want to cover the 21 days because that could be the longest time possible for it to come
double.
about.
It's almost double though.
But it could still show between 12 and 21 days. So
Yeah.
you want to cover your whole base.
The average is 8 to 10, so there could have been some cases.
And another
that were
question, sorry to be so.
Go for it.
You did not mention sweat.
Oh, on sweat being a bodily fluid? That's interesting.
We're seeing.
I didn't read anything about that, but I can look it up for you and
Well,
let you know.
Yeah, I just found it interesting that
I think
as a bodily fluid.
I've seen that it isn't a full virus in the sweat, but I can double check and make sure.
Go ahead.
So it's a virus, not an organism?
Yes, it's a blood-borne virus, and it's red because it's in the blood.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you think if the media had focused on teaching people about the virus versus spreading the panic, there would have been less of a... It almost felt like when it first happened there was kind of a bombshell of, oh, this is crazy. If they had focused on maybe teaching people versus... Do you think that would have been more beneficial than spreading the fear or panic
I think
aspect?
so. I think so, but I feel like everyone's gonna freak out either way. So, but definitely, I think if they would have educated people rather than just tell them what was happening, then I think it would have helped.
I agree. This is the first time I've actually seen a presentation on it. I was very interested to see that.
Yeah.
It was nice how you put together the map and the virus. And it gave me a better perspective of it.
In regard to that, I was noticing in your map that Congo isn't even there. That's because Ebola originally was discovered or was...
Well, it wasn't Congo at the time that it was discovered. It was some other place. I don't
And that's
know.
what it was like. It was 10 years ago that the initial
It was
Ebola...
1976
Wow.
that it was found. And It was really hard for me to find the Ebola River. I searched Ebola River and nothing came up. I'm sure they've changed the name by now. But then I found it, and it's tiny. Like, I don't even think the river mark is the Ebola River, but it's at the very edge of a river. It's like the starting part of
Tributary, yeah.
one river. I didn't find out which river that was, but it
No, it's the headwaters of a small river that tributaries to a larger river in the upper northeast of that state of Congo.
it's right there. So is that east or is that west?
Well, it's more north there. When I saw the initial diagram or whatever, I had the impression it was more over in the northeast, but obviously it's in the north of their country.
I researched a good amount to find it.
That's interesting. I'd never heard that before. That's interesting.
What's interesting too about the virus that I learned is that it actually has like little hooks. They nicknamed it the Velcro virus because it has these hooks that are very much like the male. You don't see it per se in that illustration, but if you saw if you saw a electron microscope vision of it, it has these hooks that it like latches on, and your body is not able to. Your ordinary white blood cells cannot free themselves of it or whatever. So that's how they're trying to figure out a solution, is how to turn off those hooks. Or actually, I think what they've developed is some sort of coating, like,
So it can't bind to it?
right, take that hooking mechanism off of it, and that's what they're hoping would help solve it.
You were very informative.
Very.
Any more
That
questions?
was great.
1,
2,
3.
4.
5.
6.
Good job.